What if we took one of the spammiest Warframes and paired him with the laziest weapon? Dante is powerful, but spamming his abilities to do damage gets tiring quickly. To remedy this, we'll use the most deadly weapon in Warframe, at least in terms of player kills, the Ocucor. So here's a little taste of what this setup will be doing. No Riven mod, no galvanized stacks, just our buffs and Ocucor tendrils. Now, if you see this and you're thinking to yourself, that didn't look too impressive even if these enemies are tankier than many mobs at level cap. Well, what if I told you I had an Extinguished Dragon key on, reducing damage by 75%? And for a damage over time build like this one, it double dips like a faction mod, reducing our damage by another 75%. So this build would be about 8 times stronger than what you just saw. So yeah, Dante is a strong frame, the Ocucor is a strong weapon. You've probably seen the yearly recap with the billions of kills the community has racked up with the thing. Generally speaking though, this weapon lacks the damage for level cap content on its own. Specific frames and buffs are required for it to perform at an acceptable level. Saren, Sight, Oraxia, Volt, competent weapon platforms make Ocucor feel great. Dante is another one that is far less utilized for this purpose. If you find these videos helpful, leave a like or comment, it really helps me out, and I'm always looking for feedback or suggestions to improve my content so I can bring you solid videos. Thanks in advance. I'll briefly go over Dante's kit, but the majority of the important stuff is loaded into his last ability. Dante's passive allows Dante to scan enemies into the codex using his exalted weapon Noctua. Enemies that are fully scanned in your codex receive the Chronicle Mark debuff, giving Dante's weapons 50% status chance on enemies. In typical Warframe fashion, it doesn't tell you what 50% status chance means here. This is actually multiplicative status chance. It is not flat, not additive, but multiplicative. If you scanned every enemy under the sun, then you get damage for free if you're using DOT builds. Noctua, Dante's first ability, is going to be the Subsumed slot in this build. Noctua is still important, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But for our purposes, we'll be using Volt's Shock instead. This is so we can leverage the Shock Trooper augment. We'll be playing around electric DOT and sourcing a large amount of electric from this augment. You could use Roar instead, but Roar isn't a clear winner in this build due to elemental weightings. Dante's Light Verse is very simple in this build. Activating Light Verse will grant Overguard to Dante and nearby allies. Dante gains 1 second of iframes on top of the Overguard. This means in a shield gating build, you receive 1 second of invulnerability, a 0.5 second Overguard gate, and your standard shield gate in a single cast. Each cast will fill 1 page of Dante's book on the right hand side with a Light Verse. Dante's Dark Verse on the other hand will be rather useless for its own effect. Casting will inflict slash damage and status on enemies within range and in line of sight. We don't care for any of this. The only aspect that we do care about is that each cast will fill a page of Dante's book with a Dark Verse. Final Verse on the other hand is incredibly loaded. When both pages are filled with a verse, Final Verse can be cast. A sub-ability is activated depending on the combination of light or dark used during the cast. Triumph is activated with 2 light verses, Tragedy is activated with 2 dark verses, Wordwarden is activated with 1 light and then 1 dark verse, and Pageflight is activated with 1 dark and then 1 light verse. I will refer to Dante's abilities as 2, 3, and 4 respectively for the sake of ability combinations used for Final Verse. If we are activating Triumph, then we would use a 2-2-4 combo, our second ability twice in a row, and then our 4th ability. Triumph, our 2-2-4 combo, is going to single-handedly carry our defenses. The initial cast grants you and allies a large burst of Overguard. For level cap, the amount of Overguard you gain is irrelevant, since enemies do so much damage they'll always be instantly shredded. However, this buff also gives you Overguard generation for 2 seconds on kill, meaning if you are killing an enemy at least once every 2 seconds, you are effectively immortal, since any hits you will take will immediately result in a 0.5 second invulnerability period from the Overguard gate. Tragedy, the 3-3-4 combo, won't be used in this build, not because it's not good, but more so because you'll never get the chance to actually cast it. Tragedy instantly detonates any heat, toxin, or slash DOTs on a target in line of sight and multiplies the damage they would do. You can get insane damage from this, but we're using an electric Ocucor, so we don't need this. Warden, the 2-3-4 combo, is interesting and actually great utility in this build. On cast, Dante and allies gain a copy of Noctua that will float alongside them. Upon hitting an enemy, the Warden will fire homing projectiles at the struck target. These projectiles are rather slow, but have unlimited range. They use the mods and arcane equipped on Dante's Noctua, even if you subsume over Noctua. However, multi-shot and fire rate mods have no effect. The fire rate is capped to 9 per second, using the rate at which you hit targets with your own weapon. This will provide priming in this build, which I'll discuss later when we get to the Noctua build. And last we have the 3-4 combo, Pageflight. This ability is what makes this Ocucor Dante so effective. Casting the ability will summon a pair of invulnerable paragrims. These paragrims attack enemies within 30 meters regardless of modded range. Enemies struck by a paragrim receive status vulnerability and status damage vulnerability. Status vulnerability is a multiplier for your status chance, while the status damage vulnerability is a multiplier for your status damage. This status damage vulnerability, however, is multiplicative to those such as Pistol Elementalist. Using this ability along with any half-decent DOT weapon will generate an absurd damage increase. This is why Ocucor is our weapon of choice. Though this loadout will be fine with any damage over time weapon, and particularly good for DOT beam weapons, you don't have to use an Ocucor, but it is the comfy weapon when it's built properly. If you are somehow not familiar with the Ocucor, the selling point of this weapon comes down to its unique trait. When you earn a kill with this weapon, a secondary beam in the form of a tendril will be emitted from the weapon when firing. With 4 kills, you will reach the cap of 4 beams. These beams deal the same damage as the primary beam, while inflicting critical strikes and status effects as expected. But they are also capable of auto-targeting enemies within a cone of about 40 degrees of your crosshair. With your primary beam and 4 tendrils, well, you're doing 5 times the overall damage when clearing groups. I say that specifically because even if it looks like the beams converge on a single target, you're only getting a single beam worth of damage. Now there's a major downside for this trait. If you reload the weapon, either manually or after expanding your magazine, the tendrils are reset. So this is where the Sentient Surge augment comes into play. Targets eliminated refill 20% of the Ocucor's magazine directly from the weapon's ammo maximum reserves. You don't need direct kills, even status damage kills will count, so you can just brush an enemy with some DOTs and let them tick to death. If you're able to keep killing enemies, your magazine will stay topped up, and you never have to reload and lose the tendrils. This augment also comes with the bonus of 60% critical chance and status chance per tendril. This means a total bonus of 240% critical chance and 240% status chance with all 4 tendrils active. These bonuses are additive with other mods such as Pistol Gambit. This mod is what enables the brainless hold left click playstyle of the Ocucor. Looking at the Ocucor build, it's going to be a rather standard looking setup, with the exception that we'll be running electric instead of heat. If you are diligent about recasting Shock Trooper, you could potentially swap out the electric mod for a ribbon that looks something like this one. Secondary Fortifier still makes it into this build despite using Dante. This arcane still helps you shred Overguard, but when you pair it with Triumph, that means you steal Overguard while attacking and then gain Overguard for 2 seconds after a kill, keeping you protected. Feel free to try other arcanes like Innovate or Irradiate, but none of these felt particularly more impactful in the 10 level caps or so I ran using this combo. For Dante Shards, I'm using 2 cast speed, 1 parkour velocity, and 2 equilibrium shards. Even though we are on a spam casting build, we still need to get our final verse buffs every minute and a half or so, and cast speed helps make that feel more comfortable. The equilibrium shards can be skipped if you add some other source of energy economy to the build. For our actual build, I'll just address the Archon mods first since, well, they may seem like an odd choice. We can actually trigger both Archon Continuity and Archon Flow off of Wordwarden. These aren't consistent, but if you can afford the mod capacity, it is a micro optimization you can make. This is a very strength focused build, so we use Growing Power, Blind Rage, Transient Fortitude, and Precision Intensify to really buff up final verse. We are a selfish buffer, so we're slotting Narrow Minded for longer duration so we don't have to refresh our buffs as often. If you're fine with lower duration, you can swap this out to support teammates as well. Rolling Guard gives us iframes for any sketchy situations, and it is the only defensive mod we'll add. If you are confident in your use of Light Verse, you can swap this out. And of course, we have the Shock Trooper augment. I like Preparation in the Exodus slot, so I can cast my combos at the start of any mission. I would recommend it, but you can use whatever you like. You don't need this mod at rank 10 by the way, leave it at rank 8 to save some endo and mod capacity. Arcane Velocity will give us a huge DPS increase by providing fire rate for our Ocucor, and Arcane Impetus will provide a huge buff to ability strength and efficiency. In this build we'll hit 13 stacks providing 72% strength and 36 ability efficiency. If you're wondering how we activate it, it all makes sense when we talk about Noctua. We subsumed over Noctua, but Warden still inherits the build you put on Noctua, so we'll be running this corrosive quarter magnetic priming build. What is really important here is secondary encumber. This is because Warden is an ability dealing damage and status effects it apply are eligible for Arcane Impetus. So a secondary encumber giving us random status effects, we eventually will apply every type of physical and elemental status. Even if you are an ability spam Dante using Roar or Nourish over Noctua, you should still consider a similar setup for your own build. Your primary slot doesn't matter much in this loadout, so either bring a backup Acolyte Killer or something that holds Amalgam Serration for sprint speed. My melee slot is going to Praedos for parkour velocity. Since we have so many status damage buffs, a basic melee influence setup would be fine alongside Dante. Our companion slot goes to Diriga to take advantage of Arc Coil paired with Manifold Bond for additional priming. Warden and Diriga will ensure we have all the priming we could ever need on nearby enemies. This is a fairly standard support build, but Manifold Bond is mandatory for Arc Coil status spread. The vessel for all that status spread will be Burst Laser Prime. Since Burst Laser is a secondary, it can hold Augur mods allowing us to replenish shields without Reefer Spite or Augur mods on our own secondary. Since our Ocucor has Viral, this weapon is also going to be built for corrosive, cold, and magnetic status to go along the innate physical elements the weapon already has. I highly recommend Madurai for more cast speed and strength, but there isn't any particular requirements or anything to worry about with that. But that just about covers everything. If your hands needed a break, but you still wanted to play Dante, let me know if this setup worked out for you. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and as always, thanks for watching.